Canadians, it's time to wake up. You should be nervous about what's happening here and to support the struggle of the Canadian postal workers in their fight, not just for decent work, but for a decent postal service in this great country. You have Walmart, then you have Wisconsin. You can't tell me that what's going on here with the CUPW is not the beginning of a much broader attack or provocation to the public sector workers at large. The business classes, the financial elites, the business elites, helped by the political friends and elites who they bought more often than not, are creating a world which is more unequal, and the share of wages which the working people produce of this nation and throughout the developed world is less now than it was 20 years ago. We have the biggest heist in economic history. So the CUPW dispute has to be seen clearly within the context of a global push that somehow public is bad, private is good, that somehow organized labor is bad and individualization is good, and all of these things are done to essentially change the fabric of our societies, that they are trying to change the rules of the game. And we can't allow this to happen, which is why I'm encouraged by the stand that CUPW is taking with all the tensions and the risks that are involved. Someone has to take a stand, and I'm glad that the CUPW are doing it. My name is Jennings. I'm the General Secretary of UNI Global Union. We're the world's largest network of trade unions. We bring together 20 million workers from 150 nations and altogether over 900 unions. We are the global union for post and logistics. The CUPW is a very valued member of ours. The Canadian postal workers have been long-standing members of UNI. This is a time when we need to declare our support for them. The fight that they're engaged in is serious. It will have lasting consequences for all Canadians. It is a fight which unions have been taking to postal services around the world, and I'm here to advise, to support, and to hopefully wake up the Canadian public that Canada Post is in danger, and that the new CEO seems to have an agenda to take Canada Post into a place which means it will not be able to provide the same kind of services that it's done in the past. Canadians, it's time to wake up. You should be nervous about what's happening here and to support the struggle of the Canadian postal workers in their fight, not just for decent work, but for a decent postal service in this great country.
And how would you say the situation is in other countries in regards to postal services compared with what's going on in Canada?
The situation in postal services is characterized by a great sea change in terms of the overall economic situation that the postal services find themselves in. They are faced with declining mail volumes. This is something which is happening, but that doesn't take away from the need for a postal service which is universal in its provision at an affordable price. We have been subject for the last quarter of a century to a clapped-out, tired ideology that you deregulate, liberalize and privatize. This is ideologically driven. This is nothing to do with the provision of a universal service at an affordable price. And therefore unions around the world have been taking a stand against this. And in many countries we've succeeded, or when the postal service regulations are up for conversation, we've managed to build in significant protections to avoid out-and-out privatization. Privatization of Canada Post, privatization of postal services does not work in terms of providing a universal service at an affordable price. Canadians, I think, like their universal service. They like the affordable price. They like the access. As soon as you privatize and you deregulate, the ability to do all of those things is hampered. You can't do it. So what's happened is, over this quarter of a century, where this has happened, it has not succeeded in the provision of decent services for customers and for the citizens of a country. We now have an opportunity to look back and see what the consequences are. It doesn't work.
Are there a couple examples of where it doesn't work and what's happened?
For example, we had in this push, we had the partial privatization of Deutsche Post. And they thought, let's go into other markets. So they went into the Dutch market, and the Dutch company went into the German market. What has happened? The Dutch and the German companies went head to head in a fight for market share. And where they competed was on wages, working conditions, and the quality of the delivery of service. The result is that Deutsche Telekom is now withdrawn from the Dutch market because they couldn't make it. The Dutch company is going to withdraw from the German market because it didn't work. And all this notion that you can go in to another market with a privatized model has not succeeded. And we have we see these instances now of companies thinking, I'll behave like Walmart. I'll go into a market, provide a service, undercut the local competition, and it simply doesn't work. It doesn't work in a market sense, and it doesn't work in a service sense. We've also seen that in other countries where they tried it, Australia, a large continent in its own right, massive distances there's to travel, and the Australian public has said, no, Australia Post must stay as it is. Where they tried it in other countries, where they privatized the postal services, you end up with 5 or 6 letterboxes at the end of your garden. And then you have companies that only serve the cities, and then they don't serve suburbs. They serve the rich customers and forget the rest. So what that means is postal services become partial, they become more expensive, and then because of these other so-called pressures, 5-day delivery becomes 3-day delivery, and so on and so forth. This is a public good to our mind. This is a public good. It's a public service for all Canadians. It's about communicating, okay, in a traditional way, but it's a means of communication which is still important and still vital to the economic lifeblood of the nation, and therefore to privatize Canada Post ain't going to work. It ain't going to work.
And you represent not only postal workers in other countries, but other service.
Yeah, we organize across the services sector, in telecoms, in finance, in commerce, in IT, in media, and graphical, and in all the services industry. So it's really where the jobs are, and it's also where we see the hard edge of globalization trying to crush decent wages and working conditions. Very often we're in new areas of the economy which is not organized, where there's no collective bargaining rights, so we have a strong emphasis on organization. And what we are seeing is that 9 out of 10 jobs now in this country, 7 out of 10, approaching 8 out of 10, are in the services industry. So we've got to organize these workers, get negotiation rights for all these workers, and what we're also seeing is this massive pressure by the business community and indeed governments to try and stop this from happening. And what you're seeing in Canada Post at the moment, with the bargaining agenda that this new Deepak Chopra has, is all about making a workplace which is stripped of dignity, more precarious, more insecure, and with people not getting a decent deal at the end of the day. So I think there's a general feeling out there amongst working people that this is simply too much, and that's why it's important that the CUPW are taking this stand at this time.
Yeah, because it's really only like a strong union that can stop that push.
Frankly, organized labor is the strongest institution that the weakest in society have. We're an organization which has a collective approach, which is trying to push against this individualization of workplace arrangements that we see. And it is clear that when there is a union with a collective agreement, then there's a better deal for working people. A better deal for working people, which means it's better for the economy because the consumption is maintained, and that the people have more money to spend on other goods and services. Take the union dimension out, you weaken a sense of solidarity, and you weaken your national economy. This corporate-driven globalization process that we are seeing is aimed fully and squarely at weakening the ability of people to organize, weaken their ability to negotiate, and to try and take away public confidence in the role of trade unions as an institution. The world's largest private sector employer is Walmart. You know about Walmart in Canada. You know about Walmart in the United States of America. No union, no agreement, and they use an approach to employment which is unfair to employers who are trying to do the right thing, which is why we fight them. You have Walmart, then you have Wisconsin. You can't tell me that what's going on here with the CUPW is not the beginning of a much broader attack or provocation to the public sector workers at large. So the public service workers of this country should also be on alert. They should be, and I hope that they will rally to the flag of the CUPW in their dispute, because if it's the postal workers today, it's the public sector at large tomorrow. Also, what we're seeing is a process of globalization which is basically unsustainable. Unsustainable environmentally, and it's unsustainable because of the kinds of inequalities that we are seeing. The business classes, the financial elites, the business elites, helped by the political friends and elites, who they bought more often than not, are creating a world which is more unequal, and the share of wages which the working people produce of this nation and throughout the developed world is less now than it was 20 years ago. We have the biggest heist in economic history. The top 1% of the business elite in the United States of America have taken 80% of all the income growth that has taken place in the United States during the course of the last 20 years. In Canada, the top 1% have more share of the wealth than they've had at any time in modern history, now up to 14%. These trends are not sustainable. And it's not right that the same people who are reaping the benefits of this, in their perspective, of the process of globalization, are leaving everyone else poorer as a result. It is the same people who don't have to rely on public education, who don't have to rely on public pensions, who don't have to rely on a public school system, that are saying that everyone should be on their own, and that this public provision should be dismantled. So the CUPW dispute has to be seen clearly within the context of a global push that somehow public is bad, private is good, that somehow organized labor is bad and individualization is good, and all of these things are done to essentially change the fabric of our societies, that they are trying to change the rules of the game. And we can't allow this to happen, which is why I'm encouraged by the stand that CUPW is taking, with all the tensions and the risks that are involved. Someone has to take a stand, and I'm glad that the CUPW are doing it.